Hey everyone, thanks for spending some time with me on the channel. Just got out of class for a quick update on NCAA football coming back, and this news is very conducive to this channel because most of my content is either college basketball gaming or college football gaming related. I don't have much of a script for this video, but no big deal, I'll cut right to the chase here. EA Sports has tweeted out the following, and I quote, "For those who never stop believing, hashtag EA Sports College Football." I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw that. For the first time since 2013, EA Sports is actively working on an NCAA football installment for the PS5 and the new Xbox. And if you guys are like me, I'm sure you thought that there was no shot of this ever coming to fruition. Here are some other quotes from EA Sports Vice President and General Manager Daryl Holt. As Holt says, quote, "We look for the momentum that we're building on in sports, and it all starts with the passion of our fans and the opportunities of what they're interested in. I don't think a visit where I go outside wearing a piece of EA Sports apparel that someone doesn't go, quote, 'Hey, when is NCAA football coming back?'" Holt also went on to say that there's no real time frame for the return of this college football game other than the fact that it won't come back this season. Now this is monumental news. If you're anything like me, you've been playing NCAA Football 14 since it came out up until this day, just waiting with bated breath until we catch a whiff of news of that new game. But there's still some factors that go into this process. I have some written down here, just a number of variables that we need to cover, and these are the things that have halted the development of a new game for the last 7 or 8 years or so. For one, player likenesses and the Ed O'Bannon lawsuit that have already ended NCAA football and basketball once already. EA Sports, they lost in court to O'Bannon and some other college players, former college players who wanted to be compensated for their likeness in the previous games. O'Bannon's lawsuit, it basically argued that it was illegal for EA Sports to sell a game with characters who have appearances similar to the real athletes without paying those said athletes. And O'Bannon wasn't entirely to blame, however, though, because EA Sports, they themselves were hesitant to return with a new game due to the fact that, most schools, they didn't want to be caught up with the lawsuit and all that. They didn't want their conferences and their logos and uniforms to be included in the new games if they came back. And this is the part that I find most interesting, because the fact that most, if not all schools, they're actually up for partnering with EA again. Apparently over 100 FBS schools will be in the new installment, and off the top of my head I think there's 130 or 131 Division I FBS schools, I believe. And Holt, the EA GM, he didn't comment why these colleges all of a sudden were interested, but he also insisted that there's, quote, "nothing stopping EA Sports from producing a new game." And that's just great to hear, of course. But the next question is, what will EA Sports do to counter these lawsuits and protect themselves and their product from returning to another abrupt ending like NCAA 14? Well, the entirety of these lawsuits, they all originated from the likenesses of college players, right? So if there was an NCAA Football 21, for example, Justin Fields, he couldn't be in the game as quarterback number 1 for Ohio State, hometown Kennesaw, Georgia, dark skin tone. He'd have to be a completely different generic character with a new name, number, identity, skin tone, attributes, as would every player on every program included in the game. But Congress has also talked about the new rules in college sports about compensating collegiate athletes for their participation in their revenue they bring in. And that could be finished before the return of a new game. Like I said, the EA GM, he said that there wouldn't be a return for this season. We don't have a time frame yet, but real players would make the product even more immersive. But with that said, honestly, I wouldn't mind having real or fake athletes in the game, because if you guys have played NCAA football like I have, there's been groups of people who love 14 and they've spent hours updating accurate rosters. And I'd assume EA would have, they'd implement a sharing feature like they had in Madden and NCAA 14. I'm sure they would, make that a possibility in the new NCAA game. And speaking of people keeping the game fresh, I'm sure you fellas have seen on Instagram and other YouTubers, College Football Revamped. Other YouTubers have been using this. And this is a group of people revamped. They're made up of a small group that has been working hard to update uniforms, features, and fields and stadiums over the last few months for NCAA 14. You just need a modded console for 360 or PS3, you can just do it. I've been able to update it myself because I have a 360 and I'm not very tech savvy, so I haven't really figured out how to use all that yet. But a lot of YouTubers and their Instagram page has been popping off in popularity, but I feel for them because they put in all this work and only a few months later they're going to be obsolete. But I'm sure they'll stay with their program until the new game comes out. And keep in mind, this is Electronic Arts, and there is the possibility that this new college game is not going to be as enjoyable as we all think, not fun to play. There is that possibility, so we would still have the alternative to go back to NCAA 14 and still enjoy college football revamped. So, and also it's an alternative for those people who can't either acquire a next-gen console or can't afford it. So they're going to have that option as too, so there's going to be winners all around. And all this talk leads me to my final talking point, and this is where I want to hear your thoughts. What would you want to see in the new college football game? There's still a lot of time before this new installment, no real time frame yet, so there's still time to get EA to notice us and add what we want as the fan base. And trust me, I know the company of EA, they don't really have a reputation of listening to the fans per se, but just the fact that they put out that tweet saying, "For those who never stop believing," and maybe, they did listen to us with that quote and what the GM said earlier with his, statements about the new game. So maybe they are listening to the community, at least this group that's working on NCAA football. So for the rest of this video, I'm just going to be listing off some features and some little things that I want added. And don't be shy, because I want to hear your guys' thoughts too in the comments section, and I'll be replying. Don't be shy. I want to hear some input. You know what I'm saying? It's always good to have more eyes looking at it other than me, of course. But for me personally, I'd want to see these features added. Number one, Team Builder make its return. For a long time, Team Builder was a huge reason I was so invested in NCAA football for years. Just spending an afternoon of my own time on the EA Team Builder website, just crafting my own 60 overall squad, the players, the uniform. It was so in-depth. There was a plethora of uniform and helmet options that you could use. No two teams ever looked the same on that website. On top of that, you could also go in and edit each individual player's attribute, their face, everything. And it was so much fun. And then importing it into the console and working my way up the grand scheme of college football with my terrible team, just rebuilding. It's a process. I love that grind, and I can't think of a better feature to include, because ever since the Team Builder website was taken down by EA a few years ago, it definitely feels like a piece of NCAA 14 was taken down along with it. Number two, a more fleshed out Road to Glory mode. Everybody was fond of the career mode in the past installments of NCAA football, so I'm sure it'll make its return, but I always felt like it could have been a little deeper in NCAA 14. Just aesthetically, for one, the menus didn't really differ at all from, say, Dynasty mode, and there was some things they used to have in older NCAAs to fix that and really help like the immersion factor. In earlier entries, you had your own dorm room in NCAA 10 with a calendar where you could go, and that's where you go and play your games and go to class. And there was also a laptop in your dorm that you could go and search up the NCAA leaders, Heisman Award finalists, and all that stuff. NCAA 08, you participated in a few combine drills and then earned a scholarship based off your play, or you had to walk on. NCAA 11, you could go or skip class. Like, these are only aesthetic features for the most part, but these college games are all about immersion, and I'd rather have these additions all coming together instead of them trying to add, say, a face the franchise type mode here in the new NCAA with cringy characters and cheesy dialogue and cutscenes that don't even last after you finish your brief college career, at least in Madden's case. And of course, importing your player into Madden after playing a couple years in college, that has to be a must, without a doubt. You gotta have the combine, pre-draft workouts, pre-draft interviews. These are all things that NCAA and Madden used to have, and I'm not sure why they haven't brought them back. And I'm sure I'm not alone when I say I'd rather have this story arc rather than a face of the franchise type mode with the cutscenes in the new college football game. And number three, speaking of Madden, I really hope this game engine isn't the same as Madden. I hope they don't have the same people involved with Madden on the new college football game. I hope that doesn't sound too harsh. And I don't want to rip on Madden too much. I know it has a big community, but me personally, I've just been kind of jaded towards Madden. Just the removal of the My Player mode and focusing on microtransactions and adding almost nothing to franchise in 5, 6, 7 years. I don't play Ultimate Team. I never got the draw of it, and I just can't understand why they keep going in that direction. So I really hope they keep those two paths separate, if you catch my drift. Lastly, updates to Dynasty mode. Dynasty is already a pretty immersive experience on NCAA 14, but adding some smaller features would round out this mode for sure. In College Hoops 2K8, I'm going to bring that game up real quick. One of my favorite games of all time, if not my favorite for sure. The high school kids you were recruiting, you could actually play with them on their AAU teams over the off season. And not only would it give you points that you could use at your own devising and recruiting, but you could also see if your player, if you enjoy playing with him, if he fits the mold of your team, before actually spending recruiting points on him. It's a feature that hasn't been used in any other game mode before since in college games, and it perplexes me why. In the new college football game, maybe they shouldn't add a full schedule per se with every recruit included. A football roster needs 40 more players than a basketball roster, and there's a lot more college kids playing football coming out each year. But maybe the addition of some high school all-star games or the US Army Bowl or individual workouts where maybe your recruits could join your team in practice mode the year before and you can get a little bit of a run-in with them. That would be pretty cool. And obviously the college football playoff has to be included. These are just some thoughts off the top of my head. And if you want me to do a full wish list of features I want to see included, leave that down in the comments section, along with your ideas on how to make this the new college football game, the best college football game to this point. Alright guys, I'm going to have a Road to NBA 2K21 video uploading tonight. Stay tuned for that. Hope you guys are just as excited as I am for the next college football game dropping. If there's any more news about the entry coming up in the upcoming months, I'll definitely touch upon it. And when the game finally drops, I'll definitely bring some content to the channel. Stay tuned, stay in touch, stay safe out there everybody. This is College Sports Survived, signing off for now.